Hello to you. Thank you for joining us. We're in this program today, Foundational Ideas in the Wisdom of Kabbalah. Hello, Rav Laitman. Hello, everyone. The topic we're going to discuss today with Rav is the ego. We want to understand what is the ego according to the wisdom of Kabbalah in the simplest manner, so it will also touch us emotionally. Look, Rav, I always thought maybe I'm not the most righteous person in the world, but I try to look at myself as a good person. I try to be nice to others. I never do anything bad intentionally to others. I try to be good relations with everyone. But since I got to the wisdom of Kabbalah, I see that there's so much talking about this term called ego. Never ending. And I understand it's something tied to every person. So my question to you is, when Kabbalah talks about ego, it's something that is related to me personally? Rav, it's tied to everyone and to each and every person. So what is ego? In Kabbalah, when you say ego, what is ego? Rav, ego is the internal force in a person that he determines that he exists. And in this existence, if he takes himself out of all the rest of the still vegetative, animate, and human beings and puts himself on the side and says, this is me. And from here onwards, there's already many calculations with this ego. Well, now we're familiar with the word egoist, right, from our spoken language. An egoist is someone who is inconsiderate of others, only thinks of himself. Is that what Kabbalah means with ego? Rav, that too, but also more than this. What do you mean, I'm inconsiderate of others? I am considerate of others according to how much I'm considerate of my ego, and accordingly I'm considerate with others. How does the ego come into expression on an everyday basis? Rav, that I always calculate in my heart and mind how to come to that I will have good. It's a yearning to reach good? Rav says yes. In each and every moment in my life. I understood. So according to what mechanism does this ego work? Rav, it's some internal desire in man that he wants to exist in a form, in a measure, in a state that is the most comfortable and good. Why, when you tell a person he's an egoist, that he gets insulted? Rav, that's just how it's accepted in society, but really, there's nothing bad about it. Okay, so it's not so bad, I'm already calming down. Rav, why? Oren, well, usually it's insulting to somebody you tell them, you're an egoist. Rav, egoist. Well, you could say otherwise. You could say, I'm an egoist. I only think of myself. I benefit off everyone. I look down at everyone. Or, I don't have to look at everyone. I simply am always thinking about myself. Who's not like that? You're saying everyone's like that, Rav? Rav, well, yeah, we're all like that. Just some are more successful or less successful in that. But it's not bigger or smaller egoist, it's more or less successful egoist. Oren, okay, so I'm trying to gather from your words to build a definition of what is an egoist. You told me, first of all, that it's what differentiates, what divides between a person and others, gives him the I, the self. Rav says, yes, everyone, right? And Oren, you said also it's that this mechanism is that always making calculations how I will be, how I will feel good, how it will benefit. Rav says, yes, everyone's like that. Oren, okay, so we have these two elements, and Kabbalah is also talking about the will to receive pleasure and abundance, right? Goodness. These two different things from the ego? Rav says that these are the same thing. Oren, why are there so many terms then? Rav, there's many words. There's a whole treasure of words that is all around this term ego, the wisdom. Or when do we use the word ego, and when do we use the term will to receive pleasure? Rav, will to receive pleasure, that's like the philosophical, scientific, medical definition. But the ego is what belongs more to literature, the spoken language. Oren, okay, so still vegetative and animate, nature, they also have ego? Rav, of course, but their ego is to supply for themselves existence. Oren, and by man? Rav, by man too, but here it's existence on others' account. The ego in a person, an animal, it wants to eat another animal, right? Or and it's hungry? Rav says yes. A person may also want to, to eat others, but he actually wants to harm others. He wants to put them down, to lower them, to make them a slave compared to himself. That how they shall be in a lower degree. He has pleasure from this, that he controls over others. But on the degree of animate, this doesn't exist. It's only on the degree of man. Or in this tendency to operate on account of others, to take advantage of others, is it something very egoistic? Only in egoistic people? Rav, it's found in everyone, just in different measures. Oren, is it possible to do something for my own benefit? Like you said, that I wish that always to be in good, without it being on account of someone else? That good only for me. Rav, and it's not important to be considerate with others? Oren, that's my question. There's a reality. Is it such a thing possible that in my ego that I want good without consideration of others? It's only for me, without taking advantage of others. Rav, so your ego is very limited. What do you mean limited, Oren says? Rav says limited in size. Okay, so the small measure you say. So a big ego is one who wants to do on account of others. Rav says yes, that he wants to control over them as much as possible. And the upper domination he wants to put on others. He wants them to be considerate of him and to respect him, even without pressuring them from themselves. Oren, what does that give? Rav, the sensation that other people respect me. And not from this that I control them, rather from this that it awakens in them a desire from their own. Or and why? Rav, because then it's called that I'm truly like this, big and respected. Or, previously you used this difficult word of wanting to harm others. That's also ego, right? Rav, well, of course. Oren, you think every person has a desire to harm others, just in different measures, different volumes? Or only people who have really big egos? Rav, look, it all changes from one person to another, and within a person, and in different times. And so, it's hard here to determine these matters. Oren, to harm someone else, there's something evil about this, right? Bad, to harm someone else. Rav, yes, but if I was born like this, or I received such an education, and I already exist in such a matter, that I receive pleasure by this, that I harm someone. Harming doesn't mean anything in itself. Harming can be it said that I want to stand, to drive, to sit in a place that belongs to somebody else. Right? Not that I'm pressing him, beating him, something like that, right? That I am something taking the place of the others. And that also comes from the ego? Rav, of course. No, you're always adding another layer, another element here. The ego is, Rav says, the whole world, the entire world. If I wouldn't feel myself and the world that's in front of me, and I wouldn't be considerate one another with my ego, I wouldn't even feel reality. Is this a mechanism by which a person feels reality? Rav says yes. In Kabbalah, I heard your lecture say that a person's ego comes into expression in this, that he has these big, even excess desires, and it's very different from animals, right? Animals eat as much as they need, right? Everything they do is as much as they need, as they were created. But a human being has no limits. He wants this and that and that. He wants to swallow the whole world. Rav says yes. Oren, is there a problem with this? Rav, well, because it's on account of others. Oren, and if it's not on the account of others? Rav, if you're not harming anyone in this, then please use Oren. Okay, so Kabbalah is not telling me, to limit myself, to be happy with little. Rav says no. Oren, so what is Kabbalah talking about, this excess desires of a person that's also part of the ego? What are they trying to tell me? Rav says that it's all on the account of others. Oren, but you said sometimes it's not on the account of others and it's okay. Rav, but ultimately it is on the account of others. Oren, so explain to me what it is on account of others. Rav, that I need to be inconsiderate of others, that I am dependent on everyone and everyone's dependent on me, and as much as I use everything that exists for my benefit, I need to see, is it not on the account of others? Oren, so you mean that's the limit? Rav, the limit is in the thought and in my calculation. Oren, what am I measuring? Rav, I need to measure in this that I use everything that exists in the world, that I'm considerate with everyone who's also in that same world. Oren, nice. Okay, from that last sentence, I want to advance more towards the correct attitude to the ego. So we defined what ego is. Now, how do we relate to it correctly? So I want to ask you concrete questions about this. The ego, I need to look at it as something good or bad? Rav, as something that needs balance. Balance, Oren says? Rav says, yes. I define balance. Rav, that will be good for everyone, for myself and for everyone, also for others. Oren, that's a balanced ego? Rav says, yes. We're not saying that it is bad in itself. We're saying the use of the ego could be bad. Oren, what is bad use of ego? Rav, that I'm considerate only of myself. What is good use of ego, Oren says? Rav says that I'm considerate with everyone. Oren says, and that's what you call balance? Rav says, yes. Oren, does this egoistic tendency in a person, does it have positive and negative expressions? Rav, well, we see this. Each and every person has desire for food, sex, family, money, knowledge, respect. These are the 5 basic desires. And each one uses them in different manners and extents. Or in one is it negative, one is it positive. Rav, when he's considerate with everyone, it's positive. When he's considerate only of himself, or even only his relatives as well, which is also himself, then it's negative. Oren, sometimes we relate in Kabbalah to the ego as our engine of development, private and also of all of humanity. Rav says, correct. Oren, so this ego is something that we need in order to be in motion? Rav says, ego is something very, very important and positive. It could be. And it could be the opposite. It depends how we are considerate of ourselves and others. Oren, what's the main difference, in your opinion, between the relation of wisdom of Kabbalah to ego and other methods? Let's say the Eastern methods and religions. Rav, the religions and the Eastern wisdoms, they mainly relate to the ego in human beings, and they have a truly big engagement in it, how to relate to the ego, how to limit it, how to make of it all sorts of forms, degrees in use, and so on. The wisdom of Kabbalah especially, it looks at the ego. It's not entirely negative like the rest of the religions and faiths and whatnot. Rather, as a lift to raise a person to a higher degree, specifically. And it's not written for no reason that all who's bigger than his friend, he has a larger inclination. Oren says his ego. Rav says yes. The bigger an ego a person has, if he uses it correctly, he can attain degrees of success that are even bigger. Oren, what does it mean to use the ego as a lift for success? Rav, ego is the internal force that I want more, to use everything that there is. But if I use everything that there is in order to attain a specific goal that is ultimately an engine, and it could be for the good of everyone, then my ego is a very good thing. And I could be a big, unique person, good for everyone, because and privilege of my ego. Can you be without ego, Oren asks? Rav says, no. From still vegetative, animate human beings, there is no person who doesn't have an ego. But on still vegetative and animate, their ego is just called a desire to maintain themselves, a will to receive what's called. But rather, in a person, it's a will to receive that's not simple. Rather, he wants to conquer more and more until he swallows the entire world. Or in Kabbalah, it talks about this, that a person needs to rise above their ego. What exactly am I rising above, and where to? Rav, above thought on oneself. Or explain to me a bit. Rav, that a person is always thinking about himself. That's how we're built. Or that's the ego? Rav, yes. Well, there's degrees in this. From the moment that we exist, that we feel ourselves that we exist, we're always worried only for ourselves. Only for ourselves. And when we grow more and more, then we begin to see that we especially enjoy if we enjoy on the account of the others. I have an even greater pleasure like that. Oren, why? Rav, because that's how I'm built. Very simple. Oren, that what? Rav, that if I am using your mind, your sensation, your vessels, your hands, and everything that you have, then I am benefiting more. Or like you're clever than me. Rav, also that, and this that you're doing and adding to what I am doing, like, let's say a boss and his worker, and so on. Our ego pushes us to take advantage of everything around us for the benefit of ourselves. Or okay, so what is it to rise above the ego? Rav, it's the opposite. It's to work with the ego in an opposite manner. Not to use it for the benefit of the person himself, rather for the benefit of others. Or how does a person look like a person who's risen above his ego? Rav, it's possible that you can see that he's doing something for the benefit of others, but usually you can't see, because it's all an intention and his thought. Oren, what intentions does he have after he's risen above his ego? Rav, that he wants all for the benefit of others entirely. Or in what actions does he have to do in this framework of this rising above his ego? Rav, different actions, it doesn't matter. The main thing is the intention that he wants to cause by all sorts of means, actions that he's doing, that others are doing, something for the benefit of others. Or and what will this give him? Pleasure, as usual, like we want from each and every action that we cause, or either ourselves or through someone, that pleasure will come from this. It's a different pleasure from a different type, a different level. Pleasure is from fulfilling of the ego. That's called pleasure. Feeling of the desire, that's called pleasure. And then, as much as a person makes an effort to fill his desire, either by himself or by others, either for the benefit of himself or for the benefit of the others, in this he feels the fulfillments and the type of fulfillments, and from this he enjoys, and that's how he measures his life. Or, and there's a term like this in Kabbalah that's called to correct the ego. Rav says yes. Or, and what is it to correct the ego? Rav, instead of using it for the benefit of myself, using it for the benefit of others. Or, and if I need to correct the ego, so why to begin with were we created with an ego? Rav, in order that we can correct ourselves. Or, and what are we benefiting from this whole workaround? Rav, in this that we are rising from the degree of animate to the degree of speaking. Or in what's in this advanced degree qualitatively, what changes? Or in that I am considerate of others and I see myself as a means to fulfillment of others. Or in what does that give you? Rav, that in this I can reach a state that I will feel myself similar to the Creator. Or in how is the Creator tied to the ego? Rav, because the Creator answers everyone, fills everyone, pleasures, raises everyone. And if I'm doing such, then I feel myself that I have a similarity, resemblance to the Creator. Or a person becomes similar to the Creator when he uses his ego in this upgraded use. Rav, yes, to bestow good to the others. And then he's not just called a creature, a created being. Rather, he's called Adam, a man who's similar to the Creator. That's called Adam. Or in how do you define Creator in the simplest manner? Rav, the force of bestowal. Or in what? Rav, that it's an anti-egoist. Or in the Creator is an anti-egoist? Yes. Or in so what is he? Rav, he's only in bestowal, only in giving. Or so to correct the ego is to be similar to the Creator? Rav, yes. Or if a person doesn't want to correct his ego, what will happen to him? Rav, nothing. He will live like that his whole life. Rav, and if he will want to correct his ego, what will happen to him? Rav, that he will receive forces from nature to help him do so. Or in what forces? Rav, that if he wants to be in bestowal for the benefit of others, then he already begins to feel how much nature works with him, helps him in all sorts of manners, for and against, to help him reach a state that he will become similar to the Creator. Or in the final form of the ego in our evolution as human beings, what does it need to be? Rav, in the distant future, or in, well, I hope in the near future, but what's the status? What does it need to be? Rav, that the entire ego will invert into good, meaning from desire for oneself to desire for others. Or in, we must correct it? Rav, we must, with our entire evolution and everything that's occurring with us, is all in order to invert our desire from ourselves to the benefit of others. When you look at this from a wide manner in our humankind evolution, what happened to us over the course of history and what's going to happen right now? Rav, our ego over the course of history, it expanded, it rose, yes, like dough, yes, and accordingly we wanted to use it each time in a manner that's more and more egoistic. And then out of this, we would form around ourselves all sorts of machines and means to reveal continents and conquer the seas and the air. And all this is from the ego grows. The truth is that our ego is our entire lift, the crane of development. Without this, we would remain like beasts. The type of animate in which the ego began to develop, besides this, how he was born and grew up, like we see in all sorts of animals. So this animate is called man because he ultimately can reach the degree of the Creator. That's it, and we need to see how we reach it. We can hasten our development. Right, so what's the next stage of our development of humankind, of our ego? Rav, that we will perform exercises that will help us to develop, become similar to the force of bestowal, which is the Creator. Oren, well, we're coming close to the end of the program. We spoke about the ego, that it's something multidimensional, has many layers, many degrees. So summarize for me, what is ego? Rav, all the matter, the material of creation, from the beginning to the end. But we talk about the ego as the creature that feels itself using its desire on the account of others. This part of the desire we call the ego. The rest of the desire is that he worries only for himself somehow, or how the nature operates in him instinctively, that we don't call ego. Ego is what is above its usual role. Oren, what are you wishing for me in my egoistic development and the wisdom of Kabbalah in relation to my ego? Rav, that it will grow in you as much as possible, along with all the forces around it, that you will know how to use this increased ego, this upgraded ego, in a manner that's more and more correct. And in this, you will be the person who incorporates in himself all of reality. Oren, thank you, Rav Laitman. Rav says it's hard work, but what you feel then, feel good. When you are entirely passing on to everyone, to all of humanity. Oren, thank you so much to you.